Hello, ladies and gentlemen of YouTube, and welcome to another episode of Fanalysis, Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. I'm Retty4, this is Evan995.
I solemnly swear I am up to no good.
And this is Genzurai1.
Haven't any of the teachers noticed that the Slytherins are all safe? Isn't it obvious all this stuff's coming from Slytherin? The heir of Slytherin? The monster of Slytherin? Why don't they just chuck all the Slytherins out?
It's a valid point. Matt's not here today, so I'll handle the summary. It's an easy one. A fair amount happens, but nothing truly significant. The chapter's called Cornelius Fudge, but really it's just like, oh, what do I call this chapter? Let's just slap a label on because he's the newest thing that comes into the forefront. He only turns up at the very end and makes it into like a single scene. It's a weird one. It's one of those ones that isn't really self-contained. It's kind of a bridge chapter. Whereas we've been talking about most of the.
It's kind of a cool down from the bombshell from the last chapter more than anything, and just more of a basic advancement of the plot. It's just kind of a bridge between, like you said, it's a bridge between this and the essential elements that'll happen next chapter.
Cool down is a good term for actually, because pacing wise, that is very much what it is. It isn't a self-contained story like the rest of them have been for most of this book thus far, indeed the series at this point. But it gives that kind of wind up or cool down and then bring up the wind up again when we get to the actual middle point of the chapter itself. It doesn't need to be like that self-contained when it's bridging between two major chapters as it does. It's a chapter where Cornelius Fudge is introduced, some theories are thrown around, and we get some escalation of the attacks.
Get a little bit of ministry politics as well.
Yes, a smidge. There's a lot of school
A
politics
taste
as well.
of things to come.
Because everyone loves politics, right?
Depends on the politics. But opening up with the trio endlessly discussing the diary, Harry's getting sick of retelling and going through circular conversations with his friends about what had happened and with the diary specifically in the previous chapter.
Especially given the circumstances.
Yeah, this is kind of this isn't the first time they've done it, of course, but this is one of the more significant ones where they've kind of had a kind of dead end on their theories and on the mystery detective work. But this is not the first time. It's the last time it happens. This is going to happen many times in the future. So it's nice to kind of see, oh, yeah, here we go. The three of them just talking and talking and talking in circular motion.
They float the idea of asking Hagrid, but Ron smartly points out that probably wouldn't be the most stable way to go about things.
Yeah, we get a bit more of Ron's kind of street smart. It's like, oh, yeah, that'd be a cheery visit. It's like keeping the other two grounded. It's like, maybe not, guys. He does that a few times throughout the chapter, actually, and the next one as well. I like the kind of the through line we get with that for Ron. It's main kind of mainstay in the books that never changes, whereas other things kind of develop for each of them. Where you get the notes of the mandrakes maturing. There's not been as many attacks or any attacks even since about 4 months ago. I think it mentions since the last two with the ghost and what's his name? God damn it.
Nearly headless.
No, I know his name. The kid. It's right on the top of my head. Justin Finch-Fletchley, thank you. That was gone for me for a second. So it's been about 4 months since then, so the school's kind of calmed down. You know, Ernie Macmillan is starting to be a bit more polite again.
Peeves has stopped singing his ridiculous Potter song as well,
to
the delight of, I'm sure, many people.
And
Harry in particular.
and the mandrakes are kind of starting to get to their teenage stage, so things are looking up, supposedly on the up and up for the school
supposedly.
At this point. Yeah, the very start of the chapter anyway.
It's always very supposed in this school, but that immediately cuts to Harry's room being trashed.
Well, before that, we get the classes. That immediately then leads into the classes being discussed.
Where they're trying to pick their new options.
For next year.
Which is kind of the only time that really comes up as far as planning their future careers until books, 5 and 6.
Yeah, with a little bit of mentions in 4, but 5 and 6 is kind of the mainstay of that when we get the wonderful interview kind of discussions.
Yeah.
I do think that if we're focusing on different characters in the series, we'd probably have a heavier focus on this. But for Harry specifically, he never really has much of a chance to think about his career because he's constantly being attacked.
Yeah, will I even make it that far?
Yeah, well, I mean, it even feeds into what his career ends up being because all the attacks and all the battles groom him into becoming an Auror, as we all know.
Yeah, and that kind of, I won't call it fascination, but that interest starts very early on. But no mention of it here, which is interesting. The most notable aspect of this very small part of the chapter is Hermione. As per usual when it comes to academics, she's like, oh yeah, sign up for everything, which we'll know how that goes next book. But it's a little bit of a foreshadow there. Or a lead in anyway.
Yeah, but Harry just goes with whatever's Ron's taking because he figures even if they're not going to do well, at least he'll have someone to talk to and help him out.
Yeah, someone will be friendly. But
Going
yeah,
with that camaraderie angle as usual.
which I like. And then Neville again, kind of worrying. Oh God, people are giving me advice, but I don't know what to do. Which is easiest? It's like he's still going on his quiet sideways arc behind them in the background.
And they're kind of subtly introducing the whole playing to your strengths sort of thing, which again gets expanded more in the following books about each individual character slowly growing into what their career ends up being.
Yeah, and there are little light mentions of that kind of line. I remember in book 4 with Moody, play to your strengths, Potter. What are your strengths, leading to the broom decision for the first task. There are light little
here that Quidditch is the only thing that's he's truly talented at, which is for a time.
Yeah, until he kind of stumbles into his aptitude for instinct-based spellcasting, which leads him to dark
Defense
arts.
against the dark arts, yeah.
Defense against dark arts, not dark arts. You know what I mean? But yeah,
No,
that
no.
specialty. Until then, he's just really thinking, I'm good on a broom, but that's about it. He's not quite come into his own there. So it's nice to get these little light mentions early. But yeah, the next big major thing is that the dormitory gets broken into. Another example of a Ron moment, because he's kind of looking like, someone was searching for something, while the others are kind of discussing it in the background. He's kind of picking up and investigating. Another little nod to the potential aura in him later on.
Mm-hmm. And it ends up that Tom Riddle's diary is what's been stolen.
Which to them makes them think, that's curious, and also must be a Gryffindor. So that kind of narrows down the scope of the...
They wouldn't be able to get it otherwise, which is a bit distressing.
I like the tension there, like the way she paces the. I can't remember the exact line work on that moment, but there's the way she cuts the lines and things like exactly. I think it's exactly they say afterwards. But the way she's very good at writing prose and having the dialogue lead into the. It is exactly good. She's very good at writing prose to kind of make the dialogue fit into the kind of dramatic impact of like sentence ends and such. Very effective. And she does that all throughout.
If this were a TV show, there'd be like a dramatic music cut right after someone said.
Yeah, precisely.
Exactly.
Yeah, and which works well for the kind of detectives angle as well, because many of those shows do those kind of effects in that way.
Were you gonna say something, Connor?
One broader little point I wanted to bring up is that if you actually wanted to have open the Chamber of Secrets and start staging these attacks, it actually makes perfect sense to give Tom Riddle's diary to a Gryffindor, because who's the one person that no one's really going to be looking for as the person bringing out the monster of Slytherin and going ahead with these attacks? A Gryffindor.
That, and who's going to be the easiest to coax out of the bed to go on this weird, crazy adventure? If you can twist someone's mind enough, these guys are going to be the ones brave enough to do it. Hufflepuff might just stay indoors and think, maybe not. But yeah, the lead up to the
Speaking of the
match
attacks and the monster, we get the sequence where Harry ends up hearing the voice again as they're going down the hall.
Yeah, and Hermione, after he kind of announces that he's heard it, and Ron's like, no, I didn't hear anything, she has this revelatory moment where, oh, hang on a minute, that makes sense. And instead of explaining what she thought, she just runs off to the library, because that's what Hermione does. When in doubt, go to the library.
It's probably also worth noting that when he hears the voice, it says it wants to kill this time, so that's ramping up the stakes.
Yeah, we've just kind of established.
Which I guess there's another theme in the book: escalation of the attacks.
It's well paced as well. We're getting to like the tail end of the book at this point. When you're kind of reading halfway through, this still very much feels like a midpoint, but you're actually not that far from the climax and the finale. So this works as a good, effective way to quickly ramp it up without going straight for the literal kill in the next chapter.
Instead of like three arcs, it's more like two just really dense ones side by side. But I wouldn't say that works against the book. It's just a different way of presenting in this particular instance. But
yeah, works in particular.
I wouldn't necessarily say it's jarring for me anyway.
Yeah, no, definitely not jarring, but just noticeable. It's a quick amping, and the fact that it doesn't jar you as you're going through is a point to its credit. But it works very well particularly for mystery.
Future novels obviously will have a very solid 3-act structure.
Yes, yeah, definitely.
Mainly due to the length, of course.
With their own little mini structures within them as well, which is one of the strengths. She kind of switches the single chapter story kind of setup for mini micro stories or multiple micro stories even within the greater arc of chapters. So yeah, it works very well in how she develops that. She's finding her feet as a writer still, despite the clear natural talent that she's just writing with ease. She's still kind of developing despite that. But yeah, the Quidditch match is cancelled. We go down and kind of see the excited
setup for it. This is one of the biggest differentials from the film as well. Sorry
yeah, because we actually get onto the pitch here. It's not cancelled in the lead up. It's one of those things where, okay, of course you don't need to show this, cut for time, cut for expenses, given the scale of what would have to be shown in a Quidditch match, or at least the pitch. But yeah, it's just like, okay, yeah, sure, cut it here, much easier. But ultimately, it doesn't really change anything. The match gets cut before it starts, and Wood is equally irritated by it. I love the visual of him running along on his broom still. He didn't quite dismount in time. It's just like, McGonagall, we can't do this, no. But yeah, it's cancelled, which is notable because it's very difficult to cancel the Quidditch match, as we know from both before and afterwards. Leading to the discovery of, leading to the presentation of or the reveal of Hermione being petrified, which is a very well played moment for me, particularly in a kid's book. It's difficult to kind of deal like the emotional hammer blows in these, because if you settle too much on it, you kind of affect the rating, but you can hinder the tone somewhat, especially when given the time constraint with this being the end of the book, or close to. So the reaction from Ron with the Hermione and immediately showing the Hermione lying on the bed as a stone statue was very effective for me.
I feel the film really nails that one too, with that cut back and forth, and you see them put the blanket up. It's done really well.
It is a very well handled moment, and the going into the film a bit more, the petrification effect as well, and was really well done. Where they were kind of like, it was very slightly looked glazed over, in the way it kind of showed it, and the clamminess of the skin. I thought it was very good. It's how I imagine it in the book, as well.
Very faithful recreation. Sorry.
The other thing I find myself thinking about was just the horror movie scene of how this happened. Like, Hermione reads the basilisk and it's like, oh shit, there's a basilisk. But what made her think to pull out the mirror and start checking corners right away if she didn't start hearing a very loud slithering noise and start going, oh, fuck.
Yeah. We never actually obviously see the scene, but it's described, and it's not quite yet, but when it comes up later, the way it's described does give that kind of very clear, like horror movie impression, where you think, oh god, just the idea of that kind of Medusa effect of having to look for a mirror around a corner, very, very cool.
It would have been interesting to see that put to screen one day in some way.
Yeah, well, I mean, we know they're at some point going to do a series on it. At some point, they're going to reboot it.
Yeah.
I wonder what floor the library is on, because if the library is a ground floor room, my response would have been like, oh, out a window, I'm out of here.
Time to run. But yeah, they find Hermione, and they all are showing her. I like the compassion from Professor McGonagall as well, which is, she's like trying to be gentle with them, and I know this is going to be a bit of a shock, and caring, and the fact that she took them to see her in the first place. She didn't have to do that. That was purely.
She was originally going for Harry, but Ron tagged along, and she was totally okay with that.
Yeah, it was like, yes, perhaps you better come to as well, Mr. Weasley. They're known already as the kind of the trio that they will soon be defined as in future books. But yeah,
that leads to the introduction of the new rules.
They go back to the dormitories, and it's kind of questionable how they think this is going to affect anything. I mean, really? Okay, so just because you're in a dormitory, or just because you're not doing outside activities past 6, I'm pretty sure this can still happen. For one thing, most of the attacks have happened in the middle of the day, but whatever, they have to do at least token effort.
Do what you can, You have to make the effort.
Token effort for these things. But yeah, the rules are introduced, and kind of the clamping down of it kind of gets everyone's tensions up again and scares the school, leading now not the trio, leading Harry and Ron to kind of decide, okay, now we'll go and visit Hagrid.
This is also the segment where we get that quote that Connor read at the beginning about them suspecting, why have none of the Slytherins been attacked, whereas everyone in the other people from other houses have.
And it's a valid point to bring up in the chapter as well, because everyone's going to be thinking that at the back of their heads. Oh yeah, suddenly heir to Slytherin, monster Slytherin, no Slytherins attacked. I wonder why. It's a good thing to raise, because otherwise it would be weird if no one mentioned it. In the story itself, it can't be a teacher because that would be inappropriate. But for a student to do it, of course, makes perfect sense. But yeah, the other thing as well of note is that
I would like to say that this particular sequence does kind of illustrate why so many Slytherins kind of end up being willing to become Death Eaters, because the impression that the series gives is that the animosity between Slytherin and all of the other houses has been around for a while because of the way Slytherin house is. It's like the people who get into there are almost always people with great pedigree as far as their ancestry goes and are defined by personal ambition, which means that it's basically a whole bunch of arrogant aristocrats. And because of that, no one likes them. So because of that, they're kind of divorced from the rest of society from day one, from the second their actual training to be part of society starts. And because of that, they're a lot more willing to attack society, hence the Death Eaters.
It's a generalization, but it's definitely fair to acknowledge the fact that there's a kind of self-fulfilling prophecy going on here. You know, there are a lot of people. There are going to be some good eggs. Of course, there are going to be a lot of good eggs. Not every Slytherin is going to become a raging psychopath. It's one of the reasons we want more characters in the story to kind of represent the normal Slytherins and the people who are worth knowing. But at the same time, yeah, there are a lot of them that aren't, and that's largely because, again, the reason they're Slytherin in the first place, but also the stigma that gets attached to it and how that can easily lead the wrong, or not necessarily the wrong, but the otherwise redeemable and savable down the dark path. At least a dark path, if not the dark path. You know, not everyone's a Death Eater, but that doesn't mean they have to be nice. But so.
Yeah, that leads us into them getting the cloak of invisibility.
Which is easy to forget, because you'd think, oh, yeah, of course, it's almost been a year since they last used this. This is the first time the cloak comes up in this book, and it's almost at the end. You kind of forget about that, because it was heavily used in the first book for obvious reasons. Mm-hmm. You think they'd make better use of it by this point, but, you know. Gotta say,
use those hollows more often.
Yeah, I suppose the thing to consider, though, is just the fact that in the last book they were going out of their dormitory during the night, which they're not supposed to do a lot. It's the sort of thing that they're only breaking it out when they actually really, really need it, because at the moment they don't realize that it's a Deathly Hallow. They think it's just an invisibility cloak, so treat it as an invisibility cloak.
It's questionable, and I'm still stand by this, that it was even considered a Hallow by Rowling herself at this point. Like I do not believe that she thinks that this is a Hallow at this stage in the story. But we'll discuss that later, I suppose. And I'm sure there's confirmation of that at some point from outside sources, at least implications anyway. But yeah, they go down to visit Hagrid, who opens the door with a crossbow.
It's a little jumpy.
Yeah, it's a bit,
understandably so.
Yeah, it's questionable though, because why exactly is he doing this? Who's he expecting to turn up? I mean, yeah, we know that he's expecting a visit from the minister, but that doesn't explain the crossbow. It's like, you'll never take me alive. Is that his plan?
Maybe.
It's a bit weird. I never quite got that.
I think the whole point is that they're just trying to say that the atmosphere is so tense that everyone's thinking that they could be attacked at any time. So it's like, it's like, oh my God, there's a serial killer on the loose. I'm going to make sure I have my gun handy when I answer the door.
Yeah, see, I get that part. But then he mentions, I was expecting someone else, or that it specifically leans towards him actually expecting someone in particular, which to me is like, well, who is he prepping for? It was just a bit of a strange moment that kind of flew over my head originally when I first read the book, but then later caught on to. But yeah, we get the scene. He's very shaken up. They're kind of picking up on that naturally.
I like how it describes him just serving them 2 big mugs of boiling water that he forgot to even put the tea in.
Yeah,
nice.
He's visibly shaken, and that's a new thing for Hagrid. At least from our perspective at this point, we've not seen the lovable. He's either been completely lovable or he's been kind of enraged. So it's really another setting with him at this point. So him being scared is just a really effective way to kind of amp up the tone again. This, as we said, this chapter, in terms of what actually happens, it doesn't cover too much in a cohesive kind of self-contained story. But in terms of the ramping of the tone, it's consistently doing that and very well paced in how it does it. This scene in particular is kind of the fulcrum of that for the chapter as a whole. And we get Dumbledore turn up. Dumbledore turns up to kind of give it, is everything going to be okay? Is the tone finally going to lower again? Is he going to save us?
Yeah, no, it describes him as being deadly serious for like the first time ever, which immediately gets everyone's attention.
You see some fire in his eyes a number of times.
Yes.
And he's got serious mode on.
Mm-hmm. And this is also where we're introduced to Cornelius Fudge for the first time.
Whose presence whose presence does not justify a title name, chapter title.
Not really.
But
no.
I can kind of guess why she named it that, because what else would it be? And it is its introductory chapter. But yeah, he's got the bowler hat. It's kind of classic, iconic Fudge thing. And he introduces the idea of what has to be done for Hagrid, because Hagrid is the prime suspect from the previous attack. And as a result, something must be done at this point.
And they really try and sell the threat level of Azkaban for the next book, because Hagrid's reaction to being sent there is he's even more shaken up than he already is, which is a nice way of kind of leading into what happens next time around and just how horrible a place Azkaban really is.
Yeah, it is a visceral fear.
thing,
He's like, no, not Azkaban. It's like he's just terrified, which is horrible to see.
The other thing is the fact that Cornelius Fudge's motivation for doing this is he knows for a fact that he doesn't really have any real evidence against Hagrid. There's no way Hagrid could have done this, because look at him, it's fucking Hagrid. But at the same time, the Ministry's got to look like it's doing something. It has to look like it's taking action. It has to look like it's handling things, and not look like it's asleep at the wheel.
Which is a great introduction to the head of the Ministry, isn't it? I mean, that gives us wonderful, warm feelings for what we're going to be seeing in the next few books. We were led immediately to just suspect any action from the Ministry from the fact that we've seen nothing but incompetence from them from the start. The occasional Ministry member is fine, and they're clearly doing good work, and that goes for throughout the entire series. But in terms of the organisation as a whole, it's just completely incompetent, laughably so.
Lucius Malfoy, when he walks in, he comes to dispose Dumbledore with the signatures from all of the 12 school governors.
Yeah, next on the list, Lucius Malfoy. The film did this perfectly, as far as I'm concerned. You call this a house? So that it was the perfect.
Just the utter contempt in his voice, and like even the emphasis put on that word in the book is just captivated and just perfect.
It is brilliant, and there are some characters that you love to hate, and he's not quite got enough screen time or page time to be that for me. But if he'd got like a Dolores Umbridge kind of presence in one of the books, he would absolutely be that for me. In a way that she just can't be, because you just hate her too much. It's just that kind of that aristocratic, just supremacist arseholery that he just carries with such suavity. It makes him interesting to listen to. Even though he is completely horrible and not pleasant at all.
Yeah, but he comes to dispose of Dumbledore, and that obviously angers Hagrid quite a bit. And that sort of, it kind of leads from lines from earlier. He claims that there'll be killings next, which, leads into what the Basilisk was saying earlier. So again, it's just kind of meant to ramp up the stakes and obviously remove Dumbledore as the get out of jail free card.
Yeah, because we can't have him present if we want there to be any real tension in the story.
Yes.
It's a good, particularly for the kids' book. The kids of the readers are going to be like, oh no, Dumbledore's gone. That's going to be a very effective kind of narrative tool to take away this kind of defensive point that's just been constantly bigged up as the most powerful wizard of the age. Adults reading this are going to know. Doesn't matter how powerful you are.
It's not very subtle, but it doesn't really need to be in this particular context.
Yeah, adults are going to know that that's not going to be necessarily the be all end all. He can't save everyone, but the kids of the readers still have that kind of idea of, oh yeah, you're perfectly safe, as the kids are in the actual story. So it's very effective, if, as you said, very unsubtle.
Mm-hmm. And then we get the famous, help will always be given at Hogwarts to people who will ask for it. Very nice. And we get the little wink and nod at Harry and Ron, who he might be able to see, but also might not.
Yeah,
we were talking about this earlier. Callan just so smart that he knew that they were there by the food being there.
Yeah, the food, the mugs, and look, there's the most likely place that they'd be hiding. That makes more sense to me than them actually seeing through A, the cloak in general, but B, if she knew it was a Hallow at this point, which I don't think she did, then he can't. It's Death's cloak. It doesn't matter how powerful he is, he cannot see them through the cloak or know they're there. Unless depressing in the floorboards or whatever.
Yeah, it's a nice sequence in and of itself, but it's one of those things that kind of falls apart once you really give it some serious thought.
But again, it's not meant to be. It's only because we're talking about it in an analytical light. No one cares about that kind of discrepancy.
I suppose the thing is that it could just be that Dumbledore truly is just smart enough to figure out they're there and who, that there is someone there, and that he knows exactly who would be there because he knows who are the students who actually like visiting Hagrid and do so regularly. Oh, that's easy. Harry and Ron.
Mm-hmm. I've always wondered if there were others as well. We know of a few, but I mean, as a commonplace thing where he's got students that like him from up in the higher years and stuff. Because we know that he had Charlie at one point. The twins he's relatively close to, if not necessarily in a strictly pleasant way. Get off my lawn, you stupid kid.
Yeah. He is pretty likable, so I imagine there were quite a few. There's quite a few alumni over the
and he gets the letters as well, doesn't he, in the later books? So yeah, we know there's a lot of people who are at least fond of him in a distant sense. But yeah, always been.
And the other thing is that anyone at that school who has a serious fondness for magical creatures will find a friend in Hagrid.
Oh yes, absolutely. Especially obviously when it becomes a teacher after the fact. But yeah.
Speaking of which, we get his little words of advice as well. The whole follow the spiders.
Follow the spiders. Yep. That'll be my advice.
Yeah, his message a little less subtly given. Even Fudge is like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah, he's like, what? Crazy.
Oh, and
man.
someone will have to feed Fang just as he leaves.
Yeah, which I like. That's a good little addition. I mean, obviously, Dumbledore would take care of it, but he's not going to be in the area, is he? So necessarily. Although I suppose he could stay at the school. I know a number of people do, but that's kind of by headmaster's permission. So it depends on who replaces him or who would have done.
We actually get little reactions from Fang throughout this little sequence whenever Hagrid is feeling upset or, angry.
Good emotional kind of reflection for him.
Yeah.
Bouncing off Hagrid as well. Yeah, very effective. But yeah, that's the end of the chapter. It tails off there, and we get the lead into Aragog, a particular favourite chapter of many people, I'm sure. But we'll talk about that next week. Hope you guys have enjoyed. Let us know in the comments section down below anything you think we've missed or want to talk about in greater detail, and we'll cover it in a future video of some kind. I'm Retty4, and I still don't have an outro.
Evan Nova 95. We hope you guys enjoyed. We'll see you guys later. Mischief managed.
We're in trouble now. No Dumbledore? They might as well close the school tonight. There'll be an attack a day with him gone.
Fade to black. Goodbye.